Raadio 2.
Hallo, Kosmos.
Dear listeners, welcome to the radio show Hallo, Kosmos on Radio 2 in Estonian public broadcasting. My name is Ingrid. My guest for today's show is David Icke, who is an English writer and public speaker, one of the most well-known conspiracy investigators of modern times. A former footballer and sports broadcaster, David Icke has made his name since the 90s as a professional conspiracy theorist, calling himself a full-time investigator into who and what is really controlling the world. He's an author of over 20 books, his latest being The Perception Deception and recently The Phantom Self. He has lectured in over 25 countries, gathering information from more than 50 countries all over the world and speaking for up to 10 hours to audiences that cut across the political spectrum. In the beginning of his career as conspiracy investigator, his ideas resonated with only a handful of fanatics. But today he has a worldwide fan base and is a public speaker at many big events. During his worldwide wake-up tour 2016, he also visited Estonia to enlighten people with his work and findings on the field and sharing it during his 10-hour-long marathon speech. This interview with David Icke was recorded in Tallinn, Estonia on November 9th and aired on Estonian Public Broadcasting's Radio 2 on November 10th, 2016. To keep yourself updated with David Icke's work, please visit his website, davidicke.com, and to find out about the show you are listening, visit the page hallokosmos.ee, Kosmos with a K. Ladies and gentlemen, the guest of today's show, Hallo, Kosmos, is David Icke. Hi, David. We talked with you earlier, before the elections. We had a longer chat than now. After the American presidential elections, we are here again to have a comment about what happened, how this happened, and what does that mean to the world.
Well, I'm not surprised. Throughout the election period, I didn't go for either candidate in terms of I think so-and-so will win, because we are now in different times. And to understand what's happened in America in terms of Trump winning, and winning quite convincingly against Hillary Clinton, is to appreciate what the two represent in the public mind. And it also leads to the connection to Brexit and the vote against the political establishment from left to right in Britain over the EU. I've noticed on this world tour, speaking tour, a deepening, more obvious shift in the collective psyche, which is moving into the realms now of the majority. Not the vast, overwhelming majority, but we're moving into majority areas. The perception of Hillary Clinton, and in this case, absolutely right, among great numbers of people in America, is that she is a corrupt, mendacious, vicious, untrustworthy expression down to her DNA of the political elite and the political establishment. The perception of Donald Trump among clearly enough people to get him elected is that he was an outsider of this political elite, this political system. Now, I'm not saying that he is. I vehemently believe that he's not. And I think we'll see that as his presidency unfolds. But it's the perception that matters. And what this vote has been is another example of the the gathering numbers of people who are rejecting the political establishment and the political class of left to right. It's a situation that when the Republican Party or significant members of the Republican Party also went against Trump, even though Trump was officially a representative of the Republican Party, far from harming Trump, that was actually of his benefit, because it was more confirmation to this public perception that he is an outsider. He's even an outsider in the party he's representing. Like I say, I don't think he is. I don't think for a minute he is. But we're talking about perception. And from perception comes action. And this vote for a perceived outsider against a classic expression of the political establishment is just more confirmation of the way the collective psyche of humanity is changing. And Brexit, of course, is another exceptional example of that. And after Brexit, that's when I thought, I'm going to hold off here on this result, because you can't call anything in the way you could call it before. I mean, if this psyche change had not taken place, then Clinton would have walked it, but it has, and so she didn't. So I think it's going to be another awakening to people who supported Trump when he doesn't actually do what they thought he was going to do and what he said he was going to do and what he said he was going to represent. And maybe then we'll go to this next level of awakening, which is to take perception of change beyond the political system as a whole, whether perceived outsider or insider, and into the realms where the vast majority stop cooperating with a system controlled by the few, because it can only dictate to us and dictate our lives in the direction of the world if the majority cooperate with the system of the few. That's the next stage. But at least we're moving on. We are moving on, and I see that part of it as a positive thing. But people are going to be, I'm sure, very disappointed with Trump in actually what he does. But it is a sign of the times. It's a sign of the changing perceptions of humanity, and in that sense, it's a good thing, because if the British people had voted to stay in the European Union, and the American people had voted to put another Clinton, another member of a blatant member of the political clique in power, then it would have been a sign that nothing had changed. So there are some good things about this, although I'm no supporter of Donald Trump.
People who are not very happy that Trump won are expressing their fear that now the world is in chaos. We don't know what's gonna happen, how this all will end up. Maybe there will be world war. And also people in Estonia, they have no idea what will become of us. People don't feel so safe because the relationship Putin and Trump seem to have, and they are afraid of all kinds of things. So what do you think this Trump as a new president of America will bring to the world? And also, what do you have to say to Estonians from that point of view?
First of all, I do think that the presidency of Donald Trump will bring chaos in many areas, because I think in so many ways he's out of his depth in what he's going into. And he certainly won't be doing at least many of the things he said he would do. But in terms of war, let me say this, having tracked and researched the Clinton family, Bill and Hillary Clinton, since the mid-1990s, nothing at all was more certain that if Hillary Clinton won the presidency, the West would be at war with Russia, possibly within months, but certainly by the end of the year. Because, you know, it's important not to judge what politicians will do in power on the basis of what they said when they were trying to get people to put them in power. You tell people what they want to hear, or what your natural constituency of the population that would normally be attracted to you want to hear. When you get into office, you do something totally different almost all the time. Look at Barack Obama for a start. But when you look at this in terms of Putin, and Putin is the bogeyman, Putin is the new Stalin, which is what they're trying to sell. And then you see Trump saying that he would want to talk to Putin. Now, I say this to the people of Estonia, I say this to the people anywhere. And I'm not saying Trump will do this, but that's what he said, and this is where the fear comes from. Would you want two world leaders to talk to each other and try to come to an accommodation, try to come to an understanding? Or would you like a world leader in Hillary Clinton who would not talk to Putin, who would constantly be pushing the demonization of Putin and Russia, would constantly be poking Russia and Putin in the chest, trying to elicit a reaction which they could then use to trigger the war that's been planned for a long time, the Third World War? NATO are not pouring in military armaments and resources into the border states of Russia to protect the border states. They're pouring it in there in preparation for World War III. Now, if Hillary Clinton had have got in today, we would almost certainly have World War III, because that's what she wanted. You look at her election campaign. Again and again, she was making speeches about the dangers of Putin, the dangers of Russia. We had this ludicrous claim that the Russians had hacked into the emails of the Democratic National Organization and exposed Hillary Clinton. First of all, there was no evidence produced of that. Secondly, Clinton has so many enemies in America, it could have been anyone. And also, it was an attempt to divert onto the Russian threat and away from what those emails contained, which was a massive expose of the real Hillary Clinton and the real political system in America. For sure, it may still happen, because that which is in the shadows wants it to happen, but we must do everything we can to stop it happening. There may still be a conflict, because, like I say, Trump says one thing, but he'll almost certainly do another in almost everything he said. However, what we have done today is avoid the certainty that it would happen. May still happen, but not with the certainty it would have happened as Clinton got in. So I think Estonian people should not grab their chests in horror so much as take a deep breath of comfort that actually the certainty of conflict with Russia is has passed, although the possibility of it is absolutely still there.
You had an interesting point of view that if Democrats would have let Bernie Sanders rise more to the public and during the election campaign, the situation might have been different and Democrats might have continued ruling. Can you explain that, please?
Yes, I don't think there's much question that had Bernie Sanders won the Democratic nomination, that he would pretty much have blown Trump away in the presidential election. You know, we had so many people who voted for Trump today because he's not Hillary Clinton. Of course, there would be a lot of people who voted for Hillary Clinton very, very reluctantly because she was not Donald Trump, and this shows the negative nature of this election. But Bernie Sanders, and again, he's a politician, so you have to be careful all the time about what they say and what they do. But he does have a voting record, which I've followed over the years, of challenging things like the power of corporations, the power of banks, and injustice, etc. And there's no doubt that had Bernie Sanders stood and not Clinton, then the Democratic vote would have come out in almost its entirety. Because Clinton today lost a significant number of what would normally be Democrat votes because those people were appalled at the way, and leaked emails confirmed it, that Bernie Sanders was systematically denied the nomination by the very elite of the Democratic Party that is controlled by, among others, the Clintons. So therefore, we have a situation where the Democrats, if you look at it as a party rather than a faction of the Clintons, have actually thrown this election away. And one of the things about Bernie Sanders would have been much, much more difficult to get. I'm not saying it would be impossible, but much more difficult than either Trump or Clinton of getting a Sanders presidency to engage in war with Russia and many other things that are going on in areas like the Middle East. So there are three levels of this establishment. There's the one that vehemently didn't want Bernie Sanders, the same one that vehemently wanted Hillary Clinton, but has got a middle ground, if you like, in Donald Trump, which I'm sure it will immediately set about molding into the presidency that suits the establishment again, which is why I say people are going to be very disappointed. And the other thing that is, I think, extremely significant is that the House of Rothschild controls Israel. It is Israel. It created Israel. It runs Israel. It dictates events in Israel. This is why this country of much more than 8 million people, according to Colin Powell, in leaked emails again, the former Secretary of State in the US, pointed out that Israel has something like 200 nuclear weapons pointed at Iran. How can a country of 8 million people have this vast military arsenal, and not least this vast nuclear arsenal? Because it's not Israel, it's not the country of Israelis, it's the country of the Rothschilds. And why this is significant to what has happened today is that throughout the campaign, both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump vehemently expressed their support for Israel, and Donald Trump has gone even further publicly, saying that he believes that the illegal settlements, Jewish settlements in occupied lands like the West Bank, are legal and should go ahead. He's also a very close friend of Benjamin Netanyahu, the president of, or the prime minister rather, of Israel. And Netanyahu is just a political frontman for the House of Rothschild. So the idea that Trump is going to transform the world into something different to what it's been is a farce. When I say there are positive things to it, I mean the perception of Trump is that he was against the establishment, and that's why he got in, which shows that the psyche against the establishment, the established order, is changing and getting more vehemently against it. However, they are going to be very disappointed, I'm sure, of what Trump turns out to do and turns out to be.
If we're talking about Hillary Clinton and her email scandal, then there has been speculations that whether it is Republican sort of strike back, or maybe it is Russian propaganda, or what is it exactly, and what is behind that that became sort of fatal to Hillary? And what do you think? What is the real background of this Hillary Clinton email scandal, which became huge?
Well, this changing psyche that I've seen around the world among the general public is not confined just to the general public. Within the institutions of America, there is also a changing psyche. See, these institutions in every country, whether it's the CIA, the FBI, whatever it is, they're compartmentalized pyramids. You've got the few at the top that know what the organization's real agenda is, and as you come down from the pyramid peak in these organizations, you're meeting more and more people who know less and less about what the organization's about. So, and what its agenda is, and what's happening in these institutions now is not least through the alternative media. They too, like the public, are getting access to information that they didn't know before, which means the compartmentalization of knowledge is being diluted because they're getting it externally, and also blatant things like Comey, the FBI head, who has connections into the Clintons and connections, not least through other family members, into the Clinton Foundation, came out and cleared her of criminal wrongdoing over using a private server for classified information. When, if that had been any other member of the public, she would have been in a courtroom. And people within the FBI have looked at this, and in these other institutions, and they can see that there's a scam going on. They can see that there's blatant manipulation going on in favor of this one candidate. And so this brings around the potential for numerous people and agencies with the capability of hacking into these email files and making them public. Through WikiLeaks now, you have a very effective means of getting leaked material into the public arena. One of the reasons that Clinton couldn't hide from all that is because the institutions of law enforcement in America, while the leaders of those institutions are protecting Clinton and protecting their own backs too, many people at other levels are acting against it. So, I think that when Comey came out about a week or less before the election and said, we've reopened the investigation, the general view among law enforcement in America was that he'd come under so much pressure from his own FBI that he had to say something like that. But of course, what happened almost not much more than hours before the election itself is he came out and said, we've cleared it, it's not really happening. This was the last minute attempt to support his friend Clinton, which meant that Comey was claiming, someone worked it out, that the FBI had looked through this latest batch of 650,000 emails, was it? Or 35,000 emails in something like 690,000 seconds. So they must have an amazing ability to read material extremely fast, because they had to read those emails 1 per second to get through in the time before he said, no, there's nothing in there, she's cleared. And what we're seeing now is really the first clear evidence that this system of control is starting to dismantle and unravel. We're in the early stages of it, but if you look at a dam can hold water back for a long, long time and seem impregnable. But when the cracks start to appear, from when the cracks start to appear to the dam collapsing, can be a very, very short time. It might take a long time for those cracks to appear, but once they do, the dam can be down very quickly. And we're at the point now where the cracks are appearing in this whole edifice of global manipulation and control. And it's not going to take the same amount of time for those cracks to become the collapse of this control. But we're in the early stages, but the signs are good.
One person who is very fascinating character related to Hillary Clinton is John Podesta, her campaign manager, who is well-known UFO enthusiast and has said several times during the history that he would like the UFO files to be publicly disclosed in an official level, and it has been speculated that maybe alien disclosure will be next year, 2017, or until the time frame has been until maybe 2032, and there are also speculations maybe it's the false flag operation and so on. So people are excited. What will happen now? The Hillary didn't win. The Podesta cannot manage to influence maybe the alien disclosure in an official level. So what do you think? What do you say to all the UFO fans out there? Is there any hope to get some kind of official disclosure about that topic?
Well, first of all, anyone that puts their faith in anything that John Podesta said, needs to sit down and have a good think, because Podesta is a crook. He's a liar. He's a deeply, deeply unpleasant political manipulator. And I'm not speculating there. I'm just looking at the emails that have been leaked that he wrote. And the other thing is that why, when the political system constantly and incessantly lies to the public, why would it suddenly tell them the truth about the extraterrestrial situation? It might eventually give them a story, but will it tell them the truth? No, of course it won't tell them the truth. If we're going to bring this to the surface, it has to be brought to the surface outside the political system. The political system has no interest in informing the public of anything unless it suits the political system. And of course, one scenario you can envisage about disclosure is that when you want a world army and you want a world government, there's nothing that could justify that quicker than to say there's an alien threat. What happens when you have a war between countries? Those countries' governments have a war cabinet, where a few people make the decisions of what happens in the country, overriding that of the elected parliament. If you sold to the idea that there was an alien threat, then there would be a global world war cabinet made up of representatives of different countries, of course the most powerful countries, not least America, and they would decide what happened not in the country as with a war cabinet, but in the world. So, people have to, not think that the political system lies here and tells the truth there. It lies. That's why the idea that the lies we were told about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq being given to us by the same people that told us the official story of 9/11 is ludicrous. Did they lie over Iraq? Yes, of course they did. We know that. Did they tell the truth over 9/11? Of course they didn't, because what do? They lie. That's what they do. And this refers as much to the disclosure situation as anything else. So, we have to start operating outside official circles. That's what the alternative media basically does. And get information into the public arena that way. Because if we're going to rely in any way and have any faith in any way on a middleman or woman called government, then we're just in the death throes of naivety, really.
You have written and talked about Hillary Clinton as being the puppet of archontic force, having a reptilian bloodline. So who is Donald Trump looking from that point of view, the man who just became the president of the most powerful country in the world?
Well, Donald Trump is not an outsider. When you have a career in the areas of finance and business that he's been in, you're not an outsider. Those circles do not do outsiders. And if he had have been an outsider, he would have been destroyed by the political and not least the financial system. He's not. He was massively funded in terms of support for his campaign by a guy called Sheldon Adelson, who is from my perspective, a notorious Zionist billionaire oligarch type character and a casino magnate, who is answering to the same network that the Clinton-supporting George Soros and people like Robert Kagan answer to. So the idea that the whole establishment and the Rothschild establishment, which people like Adelson represent, was against Trump is a nonsense. They might have had one that they preferred, but either will be acceptable to them. And Donald Trump will be pretty easy to get to do anything they want, because he's in a world now he doesn't really understand. It's all right throwing out one-liners during an election campaign, which is pretty much all he did. I'm going to build a wall and I'm going to make Mexico pay for it. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's very different when you actually have to put that into force. And like I say, people are going to be very disappointed. So, I've said all along that, Americans were given the choice between a catastrophe and a disaster. They've avoided the catastrophe, but they've still got the disaster, as I'm sure we're going to see. But, this system has to break down, because, if you have a field of weeds, and you want to grow something positive in them, in the field, the weeds have got to go. And while this system exists and why people give their power to it, it will strangle at birth anything that's going to change the world for the better. So, I think that the Trump presidency will be the next stage of the dismantling in the public mind of any confidence in the political system, no matter who the personality of the time is put in the White House or anywhere else. And I certainly would not rule out, by the way, that something might happen which may include the assassination of Donald Trump. Let's not rule that out. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we shouldn't rule it out, because a number of reasons. First of all, there are a large number of people in America who vehemently hate everything he stands for, or they think he stands for. And thus, if there was an assassination of Trump, there would be many reasons and factions that could explain it away. And the other thing that an assassination would bring is total and utter chaos in the American political system and the American government and everything. And the currency of control, as I've been saying all these years, is chaos. The 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry has a Latin motto, ordo ab chaos, order out of chaos. And this is the process of creating the chaos and then offering the order, your changes in society, as a way out of the chaos. And unless you create the chaos, you don't have the excuse to change society to get out of the chaos. And whatever happens, whether there is that assassination, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, I'm saying I wouldn't rule it out, Trump stays in the White House, there's still going to be chaos. So whichever way this election had gone today, Israel was the winner. And if Israel was the winner, the Rothschilds was the winner, and that's good for nobody except the Rothschilds. Well, the way that humanity is controlled is through a four-letter word, in English anyway, called fear. And if people can be brought into a state of fear, they will give their power away to anything and anyone they believe will protect them from what they fear. This is why when you are persuaded that Russia is going to somehow invade your country, your power immediately gets given to NATO as something you think will protect you from what you fear. So, People need to realize that there are billions of people in the world, and the people that have horrific agendas for the world are a fraction of those billions. And we need to look the world in the eye, and we need to look the political system in the eye, in whatever country it is, and not let it intimidate us, not let it manipulate us into fear so that we give our power away, but to retain our power. But that's for the individual. If people want to succumb to fear, it's a choice. If people don't want to succumb to fear, that's just another choice. And those two choices make the difference between a world that's free and a world that's fundamentally controlled.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was world-famous conspiracy investigator and writer, the legendary David Icke, commenting on American presidential elections. If you're interested in the show you were listening, please visit the website hallokosmos.ee, Kosmos with a K. And from there, you'll find the link to the archive of the radio show Hallo, Kosmos, hosted by Ingrid Beck on Radio 2, Estonian Public Broadcasting. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful awakening.